YouTube, over the past few seasons, the Phoenix Suns have made quite a lot of moves to shake up their roster, and quite frankly, over the past 5 seasons, they've had a ton of success. In 2021, you get all the way to the finals. Unfortunately, you run into Giannis Antetokounmpo and you lose the finals, but that is a big accomplishment for this franchise. Haven't been there since Charles Barkley. In 2022, you have the best record in the Western Conference, winning 60+ games. Unfortunately, you lose in the second round in a disappointing fashion, and you say, you know what, we're not going to wait around to get better. We're going to go out and get Kevin Durant, trade Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, some young pieces for Kevin Durant, and things looked pretty good. You make it to the West semis again in 2023. Unfortunately, you face the NBA champions once again in the Denver Nuggets, but I think an encouraging season nonetheless. And now you have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, and then they say, you know what, that was pretty mediocre. We're gonna go out and give a massive haul for Bradley Beal, and there's been a ton of criticism about this trade. I was one of the people that criticized it last year. It didn't go super well in that regard. That topic is played out. It's we're not going to talk about that too much in this video. You have what you have on this roster. That's kind of the way I feel about it. We're going to talk about what's going on with the Suns right now, not what they should have done last season, but I digress. You trade for Bradley Beal, and health was a concern last season, and you end up losing in the first round in pretty big fashion to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And in my opinion, you have a top 3 tandem in the entire league. One of the best big threes in the league, no question about it. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal. There was a lack of depth with the Phoenix Suns clearly last season, and you actually addressed that in a massive way this offseason, and that's why I think the Phoenix Suns, number 1, are much improved from last season, and number 2, could end up being way better than we think. I mean, anytime you have that level of superstardom at the top of your roster, and then you fill it out a lot more, you get a new head coach, Mike Budenholzer, who Kevin Durant will know all about, by facing him and his Bucks in the 2021 Eastern Conference semis, and the Bucks got the best of them. So my point is, I actually think the Phoenix Suns are way better than they were last year, and I think they're not exactly getting enough credit by the media as far as their ceiling next season. I mean, if they put all the pieces together and everything works well, it wouldn't be super smart to say this team can't be a Western Conference Finals team if all of that happens. Anytime you have KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, and then you bring in a bunch of depth to address your needs, which we're going to talk about in this NBA deep dive, you're clearly going to have as good of a shot as some of the best teams in the West. So in this video, I want to talk about why I think the Phoenix Suns are a 50+ win team, why I think their ceiling is so high in the Western Conference. Even with the historically great Western Conference next season, they have a great chance to make it as far as almost anybody. And in this video, we're going to be diving through every offseason move they've made. Okay, so draft, free agency, trades, the whole thing, departures, re-signings, additions. We're going to go detail by detail every single move, and then we're also after that going to do a big deep dive on their roster for the upcoming 2025 season. And throughout the video, I'm going to be sprinkling in my takes of why I think they're so much improved and how good they can be, why I love the moves they've made this offseason. If you're a Phoenix Suns fan, make sure you guys let me know that you're here in the comments section. And also, just real quick before we get into the deep dive, if you're a supporter of this channel, I actually did my first collab video with @TheBuzzerSports, and I will actually leave a link to his channel in the description. If you like my content and how in-depth and thorough some of my videos are, and you're a supporter of the channel, I promise you will like most of his videos, because this guy is a really smart, good YouTuber. He makes really great videos, and I promise you guys he knows ball just as much as I do, and I think maybe even more, because doing that collaboration video, we're each giving our breakout players for the 2025 season. So make sure you guys go subscribe to @TheBuzzerSports. Check out that video that I was in, the collaboration video. It was a lot of fun, and can we get him close to 500 subs? Right now he's at 350 something, I believe. So subscribe to @TheBuzzerSports and leave a comment on the collaboration video that I sent you. Say D-Have sent me. Let's get his channel off to the races, and show the same support that you would for me. I promise you're gonna like his content. With that out of the way, thank you for sitting through that. Let's get right into the Phoenix Suns deep dive for the 2025 season, folks. Let's go. So as I mentioned, we're going to be starting with all of the offseason moves. It's going to be multiple categories, okay? So we're going to do re-signings, additions, departures, and then we'll go through the draft, and then we'll do the roster deep dive. So we're going to start with the re-signings. And, first and foremost, Bol returns on a 1-year deal. Bol's a fun player. I love watching him play. I think there is a ton of center talent on this team, and, we'll get into all the players in a bit and what I think about the rotation, but, Bol returning on a 1-year deal, it's just another guy that you can, maybe put in some situations at the center, at the power forward. He is long. He is athletic. He is a versatile player. I'm not going to say he's a perfect player, but I do think his skill set is pretty unique, obviously, and his, height, weight, athleticism profile is certainly unique. So, Bol returning on a 1-year deal. Damian Lee returns on a 1-year deal. And, Damian Lee in the 2022-2023 NBA season shot 45% from 3, which is absolutely insane. So it's pretty clear that the Phoenix Suns like Damian Lee as kind of a two-way depth piece, and I actually like the move too. It's a 1-year deal at the end of the day. So Josh Okogie returns on a 2-year deal, and Josh Okogie being one of the better wing defenders on this team, and that is an area you improved a ton on, is the wing defenders. And getting Josh Okogie back on this team for a 2-year deal makes a lot of sense to me because just a really good 3-and-D option. You have a ton of them that are going to be competing for minutes, and Josh Okogie is going to be towards the top of the list because he's a veteran that has plenty of experience with the NBA. Last season even starting 11 games for your team, and again, provides solid defense. In an ideal world, he'll shoot a lot better from the 3 next season, but this is a good move for the wing depth for the defenders, right? So W there. But the biggest re-signing you have is Royce O'Neale on a 4-year deal, and that rhymed, and I didn't intend that. But listen, Royce O'Neale you acquired from the Brooklyn Nets in a trade last season, and Royce O'Neale is one of the more versatile players on your team. He is a great role player. He can shoot the 3 pretty well. Last season averaging 38% on 5 attempts per game with Phoenix in 30 games. He started 8 of them. He can score a little bit. He can pass a little bit. He's a good rebounder, and he's solid, versatile defender. He can really play a couple positions, and honestly, he can handle the ball a little bit. He can be kind of a spot facilitator in a pinch, and I think this is a versatile player, and adding him for the defense, I think he 100% starts on your team next season and provides a lot of gritty toughness and edge and versatility to your role player group. So this is a great move. Royce O'Neale, one of the best role players that you can find for that versatility, and I think he's probably one of the better role players on this team, no question about it. So those are the re-signings. You basically bolster some depth there. You bring back some guys that you like, and maybe can add a lot of complementary depth and versatility to this team. Royce O'Neale being the best of the bunch in my opinion. For the additions category, this is where you really popped off, folks, and as of recently too. Phoenix Suns go out and get probably the best point guard arguably in the free agent market. I mean, he was available longer than I expected he would be, and this is Tyus Jones, previously with the Washington Wizards last season. Tyus Jones is one of the most elite decision makers and floor generals in the entire league, one of the most consistent, reliable playmakers you can possibly find. And as we know with the Phoenix Suns last season, if you watch them a lot, which I did, the point guard was kind of up in the air of, night to night who's going to play, right? Devin Booker played a lot at point guard last season. He was probably the main guy, and then Bradley Beal, when he was healthy, was playing point guard. These guys are not point guards. They actually, I think Devin Booker did a really great job in that role, but he's best utilized as a on-ball shot creating, elite scoring guard. Okay, so he is a great playmaker and an underrated one, but I think when he has to do most of the playmaking, I think it actually, maybe takes away a little bit from his best value, which is as a scorer. And now that you have a reliable starting caliber point guard that will not turn the basketball over, we certainly know that can shoot the 3 super well off the catch and at times on his own off the dribble, you are in great hands with your offense because now you don't have to let Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal do all of the playmaking. So I think these 3 elite scorers are best as scorers, and I'm not saying they can't play make, because actually I think they're all pretty good at it. Devin Booker probably being the best, but I think too much energy was distributed to the playmaking duties for these 3 players last season, and now they get to do what they do best, which is just create a ton of amazing shots and knock them down at about as efficient as anyone in the league. These guys are going to be so much better in this role. Now that you add Tyus Jones, it's kind of a game changer for your offense, to be honest with you. You actually acquire EJ Liddell in a trade with the Atlanta Hawks, and actually EJ Liddell was involved in the DeJounte Murray trade. Basically packs his bags and unloads them in Atlanta, and then he gets a phone call that says you're going to Phoenix. So kind of an interesting trade there. You actually trade him for David Roddy, who you acquired from the Memphis Grizzlies, I believe. So this is a lot of movement here for EJ Liddell and David Roddy, but EJ Liddell, a depth piece. He's a young player that I think clearly has some upside if you're going to be making trades like that. He is a forward that we'll have to see what his role or potential is on this team. I'm not sure he's going to have much of a role with the wings that are on this team right now, but I think it's an interesting move. We'll have to see how it works out. Monte Morris, another point guard, okay? Another consistent playmaking point guard that does not turn the basketball over historically throughout his career. Spent last season with Minnesota and Detroit, and he actually had a limited role on kind of both of those teams. So I'm wondering, what's Monte Morris's weakness now that, before he was known as a solid complementary playmaking point guard, and he played a lot of time with the Denver Nuggets and really helped them out there. But another guy like Tyus Jones, where if you look at his assist to turnover ratio throughout his career, it's actually super efficient. And I'm wondering, like, clearly this is something that the Suns are prioritizing, so last season when you have guys that aren't, natural point guards, they're going to make some mistakes and turn the ball over. You're really going to be one of the top teams as far as low turnover numbers. So I love the move for both of these point guards. And then Mason Plumlee to back up Jusuf Nurkic at the 5 potentially. Again, there is a ton of center talent on this team. We'll have to see if he actually gets that backup 5 role, but he comes in on a 1-year deal as well. And Mason Plumlee has had a lot of improvement, primarily his first year with the Los Angeles Clippers. When he was with Charlotte, he was a starting center for them, and it actually was one of the worst graded centers in the league, but he's just not a starting center. When he comes into the Los Angeles Clippers in 2023, I believe it was, he actually provided a ton of value as a backup 5, and I think he's best suited as a backup 5 that has offensive basketball IQ, passing. He's a great passer for a big man, good, solid, fundamental guy that can, be a smart player offensively. I think he has his limitations, but, if you're going to tell me right now that he's your backup 5, I think that's not the worst thing in the world. The Suns clearly are prioritizing offensive centers, which is kind of an interesting move to me, but you think about Jusuf Nurkic, you think about now Mason Plumlee, and also, we'll talk about this guy in a little bit, but Okogie, your 40th overall pick in the draft in the 2nd round, he is kind of a similar player to Mason Plumlee in a lot of ways, which, we'll talk about this, but I like the moves in all of these additions, especially the point guards. I think it's a fantastic, dual signing there of 2 guys that can come in and play make well, and now your point guards are set for next season, no question about it. These guys are going to have the ball in their hands and they're going to make good decisions with it, and I love the moves for the Suns. As far as the departures, you have a few, and one of them is Drew Eubanks, who signed a deal with the Utah Jazz. He was your backup 5 last season. Again, the center movement on this roster is nuts because it is a situation where I think you have 3 or 4 quality, centers on the roster that are going to be competing for that backup 5 role. And we talked about Mason Plumlee. We'll get into the draft pick, Okogie, but Drew Eubanks, clearly wasn't fitting your plans as the backup 5, not the right type of center. So he signs with the Jazz. I think you replace him pretty well with Mason Plumlee, if I'm being honest. Eric Gordon, one of the more prominent guards for this team last season, actually played pretty well and pretty consistently offensively, I think, as a, great shooter, as a 2 guard. He leaves in free agency, goes to my 76ers, and, I couldn't be happier as a Sixers fan. I love Eric Gordon, and I think, it makes sense for the Suns because you're going to have one of the best guard lineups in the entire league, which we'll get into, but you have 4 guards that are absolutely phenomenal. Okay, so your guard rotation is going to be nuts, and I think Eric Gordon clearly is older than a lot of these guys, and kind of a redundant skill set to some of these guys. So we'll talk about that, but not the end of the world that you lose Eric Gordon. I actually think you upgrade big time on your guard rotation, even though Eric Gordon is a good player. And then David Roddy as the last departure. We talked about his trade. So listen, this is a pretty good offseason for the Suns. They made a lot of moves. The Royce O'Neale re-signing is big for you guys. I love that re-signing, and I love getting him on a 4-year deal. That's a big time W for that role player versatility on both ends of the floor. And then also acquiring 2 point guards that are traditional, floor general point guards that don't make a lot of mistakes with the basketball and can set up your best players like Kevin Durant, like Devin Booker, like Bradley Beal. So great moves there. And then for the departures, again, we mentioned Eric Gordon, not the end of the world because you do have guys that are going to give similar value in a lot of ways, primarily shooting. So you're going for a different kind of look for the guards this season, and the point guard play is going to be super good. I just love the offseason. I'm going to give it a B+, maybe an A-. Yeah, I think it's an A- offseason for sure. I think you addressed a lot of needs, which, being point guard and locking down Royce O'Neale, and you didn't really lose anybody that's gonna, super impact your season next year without replacing them. So great offseason there. And now we're going to talk about the draft, because the 2024 NBA draft for the Phoenix Suns was actually a very positive one. I'm going to give my grade on it before we even get into it. It's going to be an A+, because you addressed the biggest need on this team, which was wing defense and versatile defense. And you go out in the 2024 NBA draft and you actually select Ryan Dunn, who is probably the most versatile defender in this entire draft, certainly from a forward, and you pick him 28th in the draft. I mean, that is exceptional value. You go out and you get maybe the best defensive player in the draft at 28. Listen, I get that Ryan Dunn isn't a perfect player, and certainly offensively, he's going to have to figure out how to stay on the floor and stay productive there. In my opinion, I can relate it to like a Matisse Thybulle situation, where Matisse Thybulle is an all-NBA defender multiple times, a couple times with my Sixers, and he's just a different type of playmaker on defense. The steals and the blocks primarily, and the perimeter defense was absolutely incredible, but he couldn't hit a consistent corner 3, and so it was hard to keep him on the floor offensively in the playoffs without getting exploited and having defenders basically just not cover him. So that is something Ryan Dunn's going to have to to figure out. How can he be productive offensively if he's not going to be a good shooter? I'm not saying he can't be a good shooter, but I think right now to say that his shooting ability from the corner is going to be, at minimum league average, I think, maybe that's something I'll have to work on. Again, there are ways creatively to get these type of players involved offensively and not have them be a liability. I'm sure Coach Budenholzer would do a great job with that. He's a great coach, but that is the concern if you're, Ryan Dunn. But to say that's going to define his game or his season is nuts, because for one, he's an elite rebounder for the position, right? So, offensive rebounds are going to be big, putbacks, right? Things like that. He can certainly figure out how to do. He also is really good at, scoring inside, right? So it's not like he's totally liability offensively. He has good traits, the finishing ability, the interior rebounding. Like, these are things you can work with. His elite athleticism. I mean, he can be a good cutter. He can be a lob threat. Like, there are things you can use him for. Maybe the dunker spot, we'll see. But Ryan Dunn's defense is next level. He's an all NBA caliber defender, like almost right away, probably for me. Again, we mentioned elite athlete, 6'8". He averaged 2.3 blocks per game, basically from the wing last season, or maybe you want to say power forward, but that's incredible. That is, he's a rim protecting like wing or forward. There's just not a whole lot of those, and then the lockdown, one-on-one individual perimeter defense is next level. So the versatility there, he can guard inside, outside. He'll probably be able to guard 1 through 4 if I had to guess, and provide, playmaking like you wouldn't believe. Playmaking on the defensive end for me is basically like, getting in passing lane, disrupting ball handlers, steals, blocks, stripping, drivers, like all kinds of stuff. That's playmaking for me. Like, he's just gonna be wreaking havoc on the defensive side of the floor. He could do it on both levels too, perimeter and interior. So best defender in the draft, potentially, we talk about Alex R and, Zachary Reese-Haché, but this is a different type of defender. Like, he's probably gonna gamble a lot for a lot of things, steals, blocks and stuff like that. And he's gonna just make a ton of plays, wreak havoc in those regards, get his hands on the ball, get active. So I love the pick, and there's a ton to work with there. I think he is going to have a role on this team no matter what it is. It's going to be, versatile on defense, that's for sure. And for the 40th pick, you select Oso Ighodaro. And the thing I love about Oso Ighodaro, as we mentioned, the Suns really do like these offensive-minded centers that can do multiple things. We're talking about passing, rebounding, and finishing. His passing and finishing are super good. And I think at 40th overall, if you watch this guy play in the Summer League, he's making transition passes as a ball handler in the fast break. Like, he's running a fast break as a 6'11" center and throwing like 40-foot bounce passes to open transition players, like getting to the rim. It's nuts. Like, that is next level passing. He's already doing it, and in the Summer League. I know it's a Summer League, you could say, but these types of passes aren't, they translate to any league. I promise you. His court vision and passing ability is next. I just think it's gonna translate super well day one, and so that's why I'm wondering, like, is Mason Plumlee gonna be the backup 5, or is it going to be Oso Ighodaro? Because they're certainly in a couple of years, you could say Ighodaro is going to win that job because of his passing ability and his finishing as well. I mean, he's not necessarily the biggest guy for a center, and he's not necessarily the strongest guy for a center, and I do think rebounding could be a little bit weak there, but he also can shoot a little bit. So I think just the offensive versatility, these are skills. Like I said, if you watch him in the Summer League, you can see right away he just possesses natural ability for an offensive player that just not a lot of people have at that position, quite frankly. And I think that's going to separate him in, we could see a situation where he learns right away, and then maybe he struggles like most rookies do, and there's a reason he didn't go top 10. It's because there are some limitations, but I'm just saying, like, this could be a situation where he works his way into the backup 5 minutes halfway through the season. If an injury happens, knock on wood, it doesn't, but like, I just think his upside's super high. I watched him in the Summer League, and the passes are wild. They're wild. Like, it's next level. So look for this guy to be really unique in that regard. So that's a great draft. I give it an A+ because, not for nothing, the Suns defense last year was just awful. I gotta be honest. There was low intensity. You didn't have really a ton of good defenders on your team to begin with. Maybe 1 or 2. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, I think, are both super underrated defenders. But again, not only are you asking them to lead the team in scoring every game and do a lot of the playmaking, you're also asking them to be your best defenders. And I think that is where, guys like Ryan Dunn, Royce O'Neale, and Tyus Jones are really going to come in handy to allow them to, delegate less energy to those things. And I think that is probably the best thing you could have done this offseason. And I think, the defense in particular is much improved on paper for Phoenix. So I just can't say enough good things about this team, and they're, addressing the needs, attacking the needs with great moves. So, the draft, I'm giving A+. For 1, the value, and for 2, addressing addressing the needs and taking 2 swings on high upside guys in the process. Those are like home run picks, both of them for me at this point. I have to see how it works out, but I just love them both. Without further ado, folks, this is my favorite part of the deep dive. We're going to get into the 2025 Phoenix Suns projected roster. Everybody, I'm going to talk about the most notable players, go in great detail about them and what I think. This is the Phoenix Suns 2025 roster deep dive. Let's get into it, folks. So you thought I was going to start with Kevin Durant, didn't you? Well, guess what? Not today, folks. He's going to be second in line to the guy that it's his team, and that is Devin Booker. I think this is really Devin Booker's team. He came up in Phoenix, he became a superstar in Phoenix, and it's really Devin Booker's show. And I think, one of the more underrated players in the league, and, we talked about how underrated his defense is. He is actually a, pretty positive defender, in my opinion. Doesn't get enough credit for that. One of the best playmakers for a shooting guard as a elite scorer that doesn't get enough credit. Last season, he was incredible as a playmaker. The mid-range pull-ups are absolutely phenomenal. The bag that he possesses is absolutely second to none as far as, 2 guards with that amount of skill. He is not Anthony Edwards in terms of athleticism, but he makes up for it in the skill department. The threes are exceptional as well. Last season, shooting at 36% on 6.1 attempts per game. He is one of the more efficient scorers in the entire league. And when you look at these percentages as a 2 guard who honestly played a lot of point guard last season, it's phenomenal. I mean, he was, all things considered, pretty close to a 50-40-90 and at super high volume. At 19 shots a game, he shot 49% from the field, 6 attempts from 3, 36%, 7 free throw attempts per game on 89%. Like, that is insane how he's able to get to the rim, draw contact, one of the best guys at getting to the line, and he shoots them up there with some of the greats in the league as far as high percentage free throws. Not to mention, a lot of people don't look at Devin Booker as a two-way player, but I promise you he is. Devin Booker's consistency is remarkable. Like, can we really point out a ton of examples where he doesn't show up for a game and shoots 3 of 20? Like, he just always seems to put the numbers up efficiently and consistently. He's not, people think of that 70-point game earlier in his career, which was crazy, but to me now, he's just developed into one of the more consistent scorers in the league, who's going to give you 25 a game on dominant efficiency. He can score on all 3 levels, get to the line, pull up middies, create for himself, as good as it gets in the mid-range, and pull up on threes and, just knock him down at a high clip. This is one of the greatest scorers in the league, and I think probably a top 10, top 12 player, no question about it. Devin Booker is an elite shooting guard, and in my opinion, it's his team. He is probably at this point, 1A, 1B with Kevin Durant, but I think he is the guy that's going to have to step up in those moments, because at the end of the day, he is Phoenix basketball, in my opinion. So let me know down in the comment section, Suns fans, if you agree with that take, but I do think it is his team just for being there, longer than everybody. And if I were a Suns fan, I would look at it as Devin Booker is my franchise player. These other guys are great, namely Kevin Durant. And while I love KD, if I'm a Phoenix fan, he's the new guy. I know it's not new, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's talk about Kevin Durant now at this point. KD having actually, if you look at it, one of his best seasons of his career last season off, from both ends. I mean, he really took a big step up on defense last season when he had to. He has developed into the most efficient 3-point shooter, maybe I've ever seen. The difficulty of threes that he's taking, he's pulling up from 30, 32, 35 feet sometimes, while maximizing his on-ball speed, pulls up with all of his momentum and just shoots it over. He could shoot it over anyone. He could probably shoot it over Wemby. That's how high his release is, and he just seems to knock them down better than anybody in that regard. We know about his talent. It's unprecedented to see a 7-footer even still in this league with that type of guard-like skills. He's probably either the second greatest or the greatest scorer of all time. You could make a case. I think he's probably 1 or 2, no question. And you can make a case for 1. I honestly wouldn't be mad at that. If you look at his efficiency last year, 52% from the field on 19 attempts per game, 41% from 3. Again, high difficulty shots on 5.4 attempts, 86% from the line on 6 attempts, and then, 27 points per game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and, very solid defense last season. He was at times the best defender on this team and put a ton of effort into that, side of the floor. It seemed like every single night, and he was asked to do a lot in that regard, and also played 75 games. That's another thing about KD. People talk about as his, in recent years, his ability to stay on the floor consistently and play that many games. Clearly he's able to do that if he's doing all that night to night on both ends of the floor and still healthy by the end of the season. This was a great dominant season from Kevin Durant, really showing Phoenix fans what he's about. And again, again, the remarkable longevity of this guy, his career is just, it's impressive, man. It's all-time great. He's an all-time great player, and he's still a top 10, top 12 player in the league, just like Devin Booker. Look for him to replicate that success even more, and maybe even a little bit better, considering he won't have to do as much on both ends. He can really just focus on that scoring. So you'll love to see it for KD. Wouldn't expect his production to drop at all if you watch him in the Olympics. I mean, it's just, he's him, you know? Now, Bradley Beal, we actually haven't talked about Bradley Beal much, and Bradley Beal was injured for, it seemed like longer than he actually was, because last season he played 53 games, and 53 games isn't anything spectacular, obviously, from a guy you gave up that much to get, but for me, it just felt like he was injured for longer. And all things considered with Bradley Beal, he did end up having a really good season. He was in and out of the lineup, as I mentioned, but when he did play, I think you saw like a lot of things that you expected from him, and honestly, playing again, another guy that's playing in a role last season where he wasn't naturally fitting into, which was when he was on the floor, he was basically the point guard. When Devin Booker was on the floor, Devin Booker was a point guard, but Bradley Beal's efficiency last year was very good. He shot 51% from the field. Obviously, playing with these other star players is going to help his efficiency, but I think he did, for the most part, what he was asked to do, which was score and shoot at a high level and play make a lot, which, again, now you have Tyus Jones to do a lot of that. We're going to talk about the role in a second, but, 43% on threes, 4 attempts per game, 81 from the line. He averaged 18 points a game, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. I think he's obviously the third guy, but again, if you're Bradley Beal's your third guy, you're in pretty great shape. And now you have guys around him to help him on both ends at, just focusing on the shooting and the scoring and the playmaking when he wants to, not when the team, demands it all game. I'm really looking forward to Bradley Beal finding his rhythm next season, because I think there was a lot of in and out of the lineup stuff, and there was a lot of, not great depth pieces for the Suns, and it was just kind of up in the air a lot of times. So I think he finds his rhythm next season, plays a lot better, a lot more consistently as well, and knock on wood for a healthy season for Brad. But to be honest, I think Bradley Beal's going to have to come off the bench and accept a 6-man role next season for this team to operate at its best. I'm sure Phoenix fans have already thought about that. Let me know down in the comment section, because someone of this big three for this team to operate at their best is going to have to come off the bench. And I got news for you folks. It's not going to be Devin Booker, and it's not going to be Kevin Durant, and it honestly shouldn't be. So it's going to have to be Bradley Beal because of the Tyus Jones addition. This is your point guard. It goes Tyus Jones, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. Now, if you want to say we're going to put Bradley Beal next to those guys, I just don't find that productive, because there's only one basketball, and you already have a ton of shooting and, basically on-ball creation ability from KD and D-Book. So put defenders next to those guys, not Bradley Beal. And he is clearly, if he comes off the bench, the greatest 6-man in the league by a lot. Okay, so like by a ton. Like, this is a scorer that if he was still with Washington and who was healthy, he could still be averaging 25, 27 points a night on decent efficiency. So clearly the best, 6-man in the league. He would be the favorite by a mile for 6-man of the year. And I think it would help this team so immeasurably if he were to come off the bench, lead the second unit, and just go crazy on offense. When he's on the floor, you could stagger throughout the game. Sometimes you put him with KD, sometimes you put him with Book, but keep defenders around those guys and keep a point guard on the floor who can shoot and play make at a high rate. So, I think it's Tyus Jones, D-Book, KD, Royce O'Neale, and Nurkic. I think that's their best lineup next season. And then off the bench, you'll have, Bradley Beal, Monte Morris, guys like that. We'll get into that in a second, but that's, I think, the best role. Let me know down in the comment section if you agree with that, Suns fans, because I think that's going to have to be the case. And people think of 6-man as a bad thing. Like, it's actually just not. He's going to get the same playing time. It's just going to be more optimized for his best ability. So, and I think it helps the team the most. So I think that's the best case for Brad, and hopefully another great season where he can find his rhythm. Jusuf Nurkic, all things considered, with his new team in Phoenix last year, I actually thought he had a pretty good season. This is an elite rebounder. This is a great finisher. This is a giant, massive human being who is hard to move in the post. Solid offensive rebounder, really good actually. He gets those tap outs. He's just a big physical guy down there in the paint. And honestly, he's a great passer. 4 assists per game. You can really run through him sometimes on offense if there's a mismatch. So let's say he's on Domantas Sabonis. Let's say he's he's on whoever the Pelicans have at center. Like, there are mismatches that you can certainly exploit with Jusuf Nurkic's size, his finishing ability, his ability to, you know, get a little bit of offense in the post, and his elite passing ability when you surround him with shooters. I don't think he's the best defender, but I also don't think he's a, you know, bad defender, terrible defender, I guess. But Nurkic, one of the better offensive centers in the league, and you know, honestly, adding a little bit of a three-point shot last season was big for him. Still not super consistent in that regard, but listen, I think you just got to be super happy with how he played last season, and I think he makes a lot of sense for this team as you're starting. You know, he's going to get most of the center minutes, just reliable on those abilities that I just mentioned: low post scoring, mismatch, you know, taking advantage of that, and also his playmaking from the post, you know, kicking out to open shooters, offensive rebounding, all that stuff he's going to be so good at next season. Once again, we talked about Royce O'Neale. You know, I think that's your starting power forward or small forward, probably your small forward, and Kevin Durant's power forward. Doesn't really matter. It's positionless at that point, but this is one of the more versatile guys on your team and probably your best role player at this point. You know, Royce O'Neale is got to be a starter because his defense is super solid and the playmaking ability, you know, again, we talked about this a lot, but putting versatile players on the floor with good size who can dribble, shoot, and pass offensively, everybody else just harmonizes, okay? When you have 4 or 5 of those guys on the floor at any given time, I think that is a great thing that the Phoenix Suns are doing. You saw it with the Celtics last season with their lineup, and if you think about Tyus Jones, if you think about Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Royce O'Neale, and Jusuf Nurkic, all of those guys can pretty much do that to some degree, and I think Royce O'Neale makes a ton of sense for the starting lineup. I love his versatility for the Suns. He is your utility Swiss Army knife. Grayson Allen had a monster season last year shooting wise. I mean, you know, he was one of your more consistent players, and I think, you know, him, Devin Booker, Tyus Jones, Monte Morris, Bradley Beal, like that is probably the best 5 guard rotation in the entire league for any team. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but that is an insane guard tandem. Offensively with the shooting, I mean, you know, he took a leap a little bit in playmaking as well, and you know, because the Suns asked a lot of guys to kind of divide those playmaking duties. But listen, man, 46% from 3 on 6 attempts per game is like unheard of. I mean, that's like all-time great right there. 46% from 3, and he's taking difficult ones too. He's coming off movement. He's you know, flying around screens. He's taking deep threes. Like, he is a great shooter. Like, not just good, he is a great shooter, elite shooter. And I think a lot of, you know, his playmaking upside was shown last season as well, and a big step up on rebounding. So I think he can compete on defense. I don't think he's a good defender by any means or an exceptional one, but I think he competes on defense for the most part. So this is a great, you know, guy to come in alongside of Bradley Beal to just absolutely shoot the lights out of the building. So I think he's probably your backup 2 guard, and you know, I think you're pretty happy with that if he can, you know, replicate those numbers. You also have, you know, a couple guys in Nasir Little, Josh Okogie, Damian Lee, right? These guys are 3-and-D people that can come in and hopefully provide some versatile defense. I'm sure they're going to get at least one of those guys going to get some playing time next season for the wing to come in and relieve someone like a Royce O'Neale and kind of play that role. So, you know, Monte Morris and Tyus Jones, we already talked about their roles, but the center minutes are going to be interesting to me because you have Mason Plumlee, you have Jusuf Nurkic, who's going to get most of them, and then you have Oso Ighodaro, who obviously is, you know, going to be in contention for backup 5 minutes, and then Bol. If you want to play him at the power forward, I get it, but like, and then also Udoka Azubuike, I believe is how you pronounce it. Like, there's a ton of you know, solid enough like backup 5s that like I think there's going to be a big time competition between those 4 people for all of those backup 5 minutes, and I think Mason Plumlee ends up, you know, right away getting the job, but I think you could see, like I said, Oso Ighodaro sliding into that role later in the season. I wouldn't even doubt it for a second. There are other players on the roster worth noting. You know, I'll just give a quick shout out to Thaddeus Young, one of my favorite Sixers ever, who I believe is still on the roster. You have EJ Liddell, Nasir Little, like I said, Connor Gillespie, who's a good shooter from the Nuggets, Ryan Dunn. We talked about his you know, forward defensive capabilities for the most part. You know, I think this team is just super stacked with role players at this point. You know, you'd like to see maybe a more competent backup 5. We'll have to see how Mason Plumlee plays, but I think that's going to be one of the more intriguing things is who comes off the bench first at that 5. I think the lineup looks something like, as I mentioned, the starting lineup being Tyus Jones, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Royce O'Neale, and Jusuf Nurkic. The backup is like, you know, second team reserves is going to be like Monte Morris, Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen, which is a little bit small in the backcourt, but, you know, super solid on, you know, the things they're good at. And then you have guys like, you know, any one of these guys could play. Josh Okogie, Nasir Little, right? And then Ryan Dunn as well from the wing forward defense, right? And then all, you know, the backup 5 we already talked about. So I think there is a ton of room for competition for some of those forward and front court spots primarily, but you know, this 5-man guard rotation is elite. I mean, it's like probably the best in the league. So they're going to have exceptional league-wide great guard play next season, and from all positions, you know, from the 2 and the 1, from offense, you know, it is mostly offensive-minded guys, but, you know, offensively, they're going to have exceptional guard play. So hopefully, you know, the Phoenix Suns can play a little bit better defense next season and put a little bit more edge on that end of the floor. You know, Mike Budenholzer probably will demand that of his team. And will Bradley Beal take a, you know, secondary role as a 6-man, you know, to be the third option on this team and probably, you know, do something he's not really, you know, known for doing. So, you know, that's going to be the interesting thing. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video if you guys enjoyed it. That's pretty much it for the deep dive. Phoenix fans, let me know down in the comment section how you feeling about your team next season. Again, I think their ceiling is super high. 50 wins, 55 wins even could be if they all stay healthy. If they harmonize, you know, early on in the season, they could just come out blazing. They have super high potential in the playoffs because of their star power and, you know, their added versatility. I think by the end of the season, you have a quality 8-man rotation with all versatile pieces. Okay, so Phoenix fans, don't let people clown on you too much, because, you know, you're going to be a playoff team next season, or at minimum a play-in team with super high, you know, conference finals ceiling. So I do think they have a little bit less of a chance, obviously, of teams like Denver, OKC, or Minnesota, but I also think, you know, I wouldn't be mind blown if they made it there. Okay, so keep that in mind. And again, shout out to @TheBuzzerSports. Go subscribe to him. Let him know I sent you. The collab video is out at this point at the time of recording, so make sure you guys check it out. Subscribe for more deep dives. You know, every single day, deep dives until we cover every team. We're the majority of the way through all the teams, so there's a good chance if you're new to the channel, we either already covered your team or are going to cover them within the next few days. So if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for every team deep dives every single day on the channel. Everyday content just like this, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Suns fans, I want to hear from you especially. Let me know how you're feeling about this next season, and, you know, hopefully I could shed some good light on your team and positivity, and, you know, cover your team with respect, because, you know, they definitely deserve it. Every team does. So that's my intention. If I got anything wrong, please let me know down in the comments. I will 100% thank you for that if you guys do correct me. I'm sure I got things wrong. I'm not a Suns fan. I'm not tapped in with every piece of information, so it is important for me to get that kind of feedback so I know for the future whatever the thing is that I got wrong. I will catch you guys on the next one. I need you guys to do a few things. Subscribe to @TheBuzzerSports. Let them know I sent you in the comments. Drop a like on the video. You know, can we shoot for, I don't know, 50 likes on the video? Suns fans, let me know how you're feeling down in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. On the road to 13K. Thank you guys for all the support. I love you so much, and I will catch you in tomorrow's deep dive. Stay up, Phoenix fans. And I don't know how you guys deal with that heat this summer. I'm already sweating and I live in PA, so stay cool, stay air conditioned, stay inside. I'll catch you guys tomorrow in the deep dive. Hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day today, and go subscribe to @TheBuzzerSports and check out my collab video. This is your boy D Haven as always. Peace.